All right, everyone, the Mueller probe has now officially ended. That is, that Robert Mueller, technically Mueller, but I'm just going to call him Mueller because it rhymes with Bueller. He's ended his probe. He's taken the paperwork. He's given it to AG Barr, and it was funny because the initial report was wrong. And they're like, oh, it's going to be given to the judiciary. Yes, but it has to go through Barr first. He has to decide what they're going to see. Now, there's a strong movement right now to release the entire report, literally like hashtagging it up across the net. It's funny because a lot of people still think that Trump doesn't want it released. They're like, oh, he's got things to hide. Trump has already come out and said release the full report unredacted. Now, of course, here's the caveat. Here's the first bit of damage control. The left knows that the entire report cannot be released in unredacted form to the American people. Because of the nature of the report, the scope of it, because of the intel that's certainly involved, anything involving foreign money laundering, you've probably got CIA, you've got FBI, you've got NSA all over it. It's impossible that that is going to be released to the general public in any but the most redacted of forms. Like when they release reports and 90% of the page is just black magic marker or something, black Sharpie. That's really what's going to happen, but here's the thing. Barr is going to be under pressure from the Democrats to release more than maybe otherwise prudent. Mueller has come out and said when he handed the report over yesterday there will be no further indictments. Well, there you go. Trump is not being indicted. He did not collude with a foreign state. If he did, there's not enough evidence to indict him for having done so. His kids aren't going to get indicted. Roger Stone at this point probably won't serve any time in jail. Flynn might get pardoned or something like that. I don't even know if they've got him in a cell yet. So the Mueller report was a pile of steaming bullshit. Now it's funny because initially, like, people on the left, they're like, well, he's going to save us, he's going to slay Trump. He is, the face of the true republic. He's a wonderful guy. And then Republicans, of course, at the time are like, no, he's the devil, at least the Trump fans. Not so much the McCainites and flake Republicans. And now it's like the reverse. Now the Republicans are like, ha ha ha, Mueller has buckled. And it's before the 2020 election. Now this is important. Because if Mueller had waited and just sort of sat on the report and not done anything, that could be a problem for Trump. But now his approval will probably rise a bit because sane people who don't drink all of the Kool-Aid, will realize now that this is over, it's time to do away with that. The Democrats need to put on their big boy pants now and become an actual political party. I'm sure there was a time when the Democrats actually made proposals that didn't boil down to banning cow farts or enacting socialism. So far, their message is all across the board. There's nothing really strong about it. It's just sort of this hodgepodge of different views. And first and foremost, for many of these people, is must impeach Orange Hitler due to Russia. Well, the Russiagate conspiracy theory, and I don't use that term lightly, has now completely fallen apart. There was no Russian collusion. Every possible asset of the intel community was mobilized to investigate this. After almost 2 years, after spending $30 million, after having a scope to this report, the scope of this probe was so vast, a federal court had to get involved just to look at the mandate, had to force Mueller's people to hand it over because initially it was too classified for a federal judge to read it. The scope of this report is obviously substantial and obviously was anything involving any figure who acted in the 2016 election and probably their next of kin. That's how far it went. It's like you've got to be millions of people potentially under investigation. Now, the other funny part is this. People have said they've released like lists of people that have been pertinent to the investigation over time. Now, one of the biggest liberal talking points has been, oh, look, Trump surrounds himself with criminals. Look at all these people that have been indicted, not always successfully, by the way. Yeah, but then look at the list of people that could have been indicted. It's actually not that bad. It's a fairly clean field. Cleaner than I would have expected in DC. Now, I'm not saying, of course, some of these people aren't total fucking crooks and they're just, they didn't get indicted. Of course. There's a difference between getting indicted and being guilty. There's also a difference between not getting indicted and being not guilty. There's a big difference between the two. Sometimes somebody just bribed the prosecutor. But I don't think that Trump bribed anyone. I think that Trump, essentially, he appoints Barr, and that was the signal for them to end the Mueller probe. They just sort of waited a little while to make it less obvious. The reason why is the Democrats want to be able to blame Barr when there's no further indictment. That was the whole point. They waited until a Trump-appointed AG so they could tell their constituents to keep them calm, essentially. Hey, there's nothing we can do. The Attorney General has covered it up. We can't get the unredacted report. Now, immediately thereafter, Schiff and all of the others, what did they say? Well, that's okay. The probe is ended, but we want to know everything, so we're going to subpoena every single person from the Mueller team. In other words, this is their Benghazi. Well, it didn't work the last time. Didn't work very well for the Republicans, now did it? No, I think it really fucked them in the ass as far as popularity polling went. No, this probably means Trump 2020. Unless Trump has a major health issue, a war breaks out, or there's a recession, this probably enacts, probably gets him his second term. Which is better than, the alternatives. If you're looking at the other side, look, they can't even form a platform. All they want to do is rant about Mueller. They still can't let it go, and some of them are in shock. There's a huge amount of salt right now. If you want to go salt mining on Twitter or something, it's quite a fun time. Because they're all having a breakdown. They're like, no, it doesn't even matter. It was funny, weeks and weeks ago, they were already setting themselves up for their loss, which is what they've suffered here, saying, well, don't be too surprised if the Mueller report doesn't indict Trump. He's just so evil and horrible and covers himself up, so he's like a mob boss, and so that's why he won't be indicted. Or Barr is going to protect him. Barr wasn't involved with the probe. He didn't do it. When Mueller goes before Congress, here's what they're going to do. The Democrats are going to try to get him to say a bunch of things like basically, well, I thought Trump was guilty. I think he's dirty. I feel he's a bad person. I feel he endangers the Republic. Because one thing you're probably not going to hear Mueller say when they inevitably do drag him before Congress to waste more taxpayer money and more fucking time. What he's not going to be able to say is if there was any tangible evidence. And so they'll coach him beforehand. They've done this already with people's testimony. It's all a bunch of I feel, I thought, like when they had Cohen before Congress the latest time. Here, you got a dude who lied to Congress. He's going to jail for it. Let's call him before Congress again. Take everything he says seriously. Man, that bombshell landed with a thud now, didn't it? There's a reason for that. Trump's approval will probably go up 2 or 3 points because of this. Because again, sane people are not going to be interested in the subject any longer because it's going to drag on. And now it's gone from the most powerful probing you can have, which is, again, it would be, the Attorney General's office, the FBI, the intel agency, the deep state, literally speaking. They can fucking fry you and there's nothing you can do about it. And the Senate already cleared him. The Senate Intel Committee already went through the evidence that they had access to, which is substantial, and they said there was no evidence of collusion. So, I mean, what's left? Okay, the House Judiciary, or whatever committee is going to be investigating, has less power than Senate Intel and has considerably less power than the deep state does, the Intel community. So now they're just going to have these people on. They're going to put them there, and they're going to have them say partisan things. They're going to have them say things that you would hear from any standard Democrat politician, but they're FBI or something, so suddenly it matters. And that'll pacify the further left. But I don't think it'll help them with, people that basically fundamentally don't have a problem with Trump and just didn't want to support him because they thought, well, maybe he colluded with a foreign state, maybe it's true. Now that's gone. For most of them, they'll accept that. Most people will accept the results of the Mueller report and move on. Can you imagine if Mueller had come out and said, okay, Don Jr. is getting indicted? Can you imagine the outcry on the people on the right? They wouldn't let it go either, so I can sort of understand it. But at the same time, then those people on the left are hypocrites and that they won't get over it now. The Mueller report is over. It's done with. Trump did not collude with a foreign state, and this is basically what I've been predicting would happen for 2 years. They sat on the report for a good long time. It was evident that it was winding down. They waited for a Trump-appointed AG to have plausible deniability to the Democratic voting base, and then they ended the probe, because there's nothing to see. There's no collusion. Yeah, you did a great job. You recouped a few $1 million that had been laundered by Manafort 10 years ago for some Ukrainians. You spent $30 million doing it. This was an expensive and lengthy investigation that fundamentally went nowhere. After this much probing of Trump in all of his personal life, they had access to his tax returns and everything else, don't fucking get me started. After Senate Intel and Mueller, his people, conducted these investigations, having carte blanche, full access to everything Trump during that period of time, the fact that they have not apparently found any felony in there is actually very interesting and very telling, possibly, of Trump's ultimately noble character. Because you would think that somebody who makes millions of dollars in a cutthroat environment like New York City and Moscow would probably have a lot of dirt. And you know, no matter how well it's covered up, at that point, with that many investigations going and that many possible weak links, it'd be kind of difficult to have covered it all up. You know, they didn't even find an instance of Trump jaywalking. Oh my God, he walked across the street against the lights once in Manhattan in 1992. I'm surprised you didn't see something like that from Mueller. Surprised they didn't say. And what Mueller will probably say, again, in closing here, he'll probably say, I think he's guilty. I think he's dirty. No, I don't think he's a good guy. But we couldn't find any fucking evidence. That's because there was no crime. That's about all. Peace out.